Where did you do your graduate work at?
At UCLA. Um, in 1992, I actually still remember it. So tomorrow, it'll have been 25 years since the LA riots, April 29th, 1992. And I was actually, this speaks to my college experience, I was actually in San Jose at the National Association of Chicano Studies presenting a paper, and I was terrified because here, Asian American, then presenting at a conference devoted, and I remember so distinctly, a stranger came up to me, he goes, sister, have you seen what's going on with our and I think he had said brethren. I was like, brethren in down south right now. And I was like, no. He goes, come on. And we went to and I remember standing there horrified at the images that were coming out. I think I was particularly interested, and I don't know if people remember this because there were so many images, but the Korean shop owners were in front of their stores with their guns out, and a lot was made between Black Korean, a lot of attention was paid to the Black Korean, almost to the point where people got sidetracked from the larger issue. And it was at that moment, because it was the year before, the spring before I started applying to grad schools, that I was like, I really want to be in Los Angeles. I really want to go study the aftermath of this, and then kind of discover then what was at the root of that conflict. So yeah, 1992, spring of 1992, the riots occurred. That fall, I applied to graduate school, and then by 1993, I was in LA, starting my journey. And I think it all kind of fell together very nicely because I was heavily recruited by the professors who ran the Center for the Study of Urban Poverty. So I was able to kind of show up in LA, start grad school, and immediately be assigned to drive down to South LA every week to start, talking to the residents, kind of start doing interviews. And even now, I think, wow, I was 22 years old, Asian American, in an area that I knew was hostile, had some pretty strong feelings against Asian Americans. And at the time, I was like, why are they sending me? But it was actually a very good experience, especially since I mentioned I didn't really talk. I was fairly shy up until that point.
Yeah.
I had to break out of my shell.
Were you ever nervous going down there when they would send you down there?
It's, I should have been, but for some reason, I honestly think it is because of my childhood. I wasn't scared because I think as an outsider, I almost knew that they were going to leave me alone, that I wasn't going to be in danger, right? But there's always this comfort level. I stand out wherever I go, and because I've never had that comfortable feeling of fitting in, it means that I'm comfortable anywhere simply because I'm not used to, you hear people sometimes, I was the only whatever person. I'm like, I'm always the only Taiwanese American. So yeah, I was never frightened of actually being there. It was the drives there sometimes that I actually was like, oh, okay, this is not a very good place for me to be driving through. But when I was actually there, I never felt safe.
What did you find when you were, hitting the streets and asking questions and everything?
It's interesting. I think one of the things that I really quickly learned, that the cultural differences then got interpreted as discrimination and racism. And it's because they weren't, the Korean shop owners and the Black community weren't actually communicating with each other, but I think it helped sometimes for them to hear. One of the big things was, oh, they don't even want to touch us because, they'll just put the money on the counter. They're supposed to put it in our hands. And I said, do you know that Asians don't touch each other? I go, even if you're family, you don't hug, you don't touch each other. That's why that's why the bowing happens. And you saw something click, like, oh, it has nothing to do with disrespect. In fact, it's almost a sign of respect because you don't want to actually touch someone. It was things like that I was like, okay, part of the portrayal in the media was, okay, there's no basis to this. They just kind of hate each other. Look, they can't even get along in their own communities. Kind of taking, putting down the layers. Immigrants and blacks who live in center city areas, there's always going to be this conflict. I think providing information behind it actually helps. A lot of myths. A lot of the black community was, immigrants don't have to pay taxes for all of the ones. They don't have to pay taxes for 7 years. They come in to our neighborhoods and take our money, et cetera, et cetera. It was actually very fascinating. I actually ended up talking more to the black community than the Korean shop owners. I had another person in my cohort who was focusing on that, so I actually wanted to see, I actually wanted to examine the attitudes that each had for towards each other.
Yeah. And what were the attitudes like from the black community towards the Asian community?
It was interesting because I think a lot of the resentment that they had towards the larger government and towards the people who were in power then ended up being transferred onto the shop owners who were in the community, right? I've often told people that my attraction to, and I grew up in Texas, so it was the Mexican American and black cultures, is because they were so diametrically opposite of what I had grown up in. And I think part of the community just didn't understand how reserved Asian culture is, right? And being reserved then comes across to a lot of people as being snobby or, condescending or thinking people are below them. So a lot of the arguments were very valid, but I don't know that the shop owners actually deserved those critiques. I think they needed to be broadened past that interactional level.